I never thought moving into that little apartment on the west side of town would change my life the way it did. When I first signed the lease, I was desperate. I'd just moved to Cincinnati after college, working a receptionist job at a dental clinic that barely covered rent. My old apartment had been nice, too nice, and the bills were swallowing me whole. So when I saw a Craigslist listing for a 2-bedroom at $900 total, I didn't hesitate. The ad was short. Female roommate wanted. Clean, chill, no drama. That's how I met Lena. She was around my age, mid-20s, with tan skin, bleached blonde hair showing dark roots, and a small silver ring through her nose. She had this half-lazy smile that made her look like she didn't take much seriously. "I work nights at the gas station on Vine," she'd said when we first met, leaning against the counter like she already lived there. "It's boring, but whatever. Pays the bills." She seemed normal enough, polite, a little detached, but not rude. The apartment wasn't much. It smelled faintly of mildew no matter how much air freshener I sprayed. The walls were thin enough to hear every muffled laugh and argument next door. The kitchen light buzzed constantly, flickering like it was gasping for life. But it was something I could afford, and that was enough. The first couple of weeks were fine. We made small talk in the kitchen sometimes. She'd complain about drunk customers at the gas station, and I'd joke about my overbearing boss at the clinic. But we weren't friends, just two people orbiting the same space, trying not to collide. Then I got promoted. It wasn't a huge raise, but it was enough to finally let me dream about having a place to myself. I didn't tell Lena right away. She'd been venting nonstop about how broke she was, how she hated her job, how her manager was a total creep. I didn't want to sound like I was bragging. A few weeks later, she stopped going to work altogether. At first, I barely noticed. I worked long hours and came home exhausted. But soon I realized she was always there, sleeping until noon, padding around the apartment in the same hoodie and pajama pants. Sometimes she'd invite people over late at night, usually guys I didn't know. One of them had a tattoo of a spider crawling up his neck, and I swear he watched me every time I passed the living room. I kept my head down. Locked my door, counted the months till the lease was up. Then, one night, everything shifted. It was a Thursday. I remember because I'd stayed late at work and grabbed takeout on the way home. When I got in, the apartment was dark. Lena wasn't there. I ate in silence, showered, and curled up in bed with Netflix humming low on my laptop when my phone buzzed. It was a text from Lena. "Lena, hey, can you come get me, please?" I frowned. Me? What's going on? Where are you?" No response. I stared at the screen until my phone started ringing. Her name lit up the display. "Lena?" I answered. Her voice trembled. "I need you to come get me, please. I'm stranded." "Where are you?" Her breath hitched. "I don't know. Somewhere near Mill Creek Park. My car broke down and I tried to walk, but I got lost." "Mill Creek?" I repeated, sitting up. "That's like 10 minutes from here. How did you end up there?" "I was going to this new job," she said, voice shaking between little sobs. "Please, can you just come get me?" "I'm scared." Her crying didn't sound fake. It was raw, panicked. My chest tightened. "Okay," I said quickly. "Send me your location." She texted a pin a few seconds later. I opened the map. She was deep inside Mill Creek Park near the lake, too far from the main road. That place wasn't great after dark. No lights except for a few by the parking lot, and the lake was surrounded by thick woods. Still, I grabbed my keys and went. When I pulled into the lot, it was empty. One streetlight flickered at the edge of the pavement, buzzing faintly. The rest of the park was drowned in darkness. I called her again. "Okay, I'm here," I said, stepping out of the car. My breath clouded in the cold. "Where are you exactly?" A faint static filled the line before she answered.
"Walk down the path a little."
"You'll see a trail near the lake. Just come down that way." I froze. "You went into the woods?" "I didn't mean to," she said, her voice trembling. "Please, just come. I'm freezing." I let out a shaky breath and grabbed my phone, turning on the flashlight. "All right, I'm coming. Just keep talking, okay? Don't hang up." The trail crunched beneath my shoes, every step sounding too loud in the stillness. My light caught flashes of tree bark, glistening puddles, and the faint shimmer of mist hanging low over the ground. "Lena?" I called out. "Can you hear me?" Silence. Only the hum of distant traffic and the faint creak of branches shifting overhead. I glanced at my phone. The little blue dot that marked her location wasn't far, maybe a couple 100 feet ahead. I took another step, then froze, a soft rustle. Leaves whispering somewhere to my left. Lena? I tried again, my voice smaller this time. Nothing. Just the sound of a branch snapping. My heart started hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. I turned in a slow circle, the flashlight beam trembling over the trees. The night felt heavier now, tighter, like it was pressing against my skin. And then I saw him. A man stepped out from behind a tree about 30 feet away. Dark hoodie, hands in his pockets, face hidden. I froze. Hey, I called, trying to sound steady. You see a girl around here? My roommate. He didn't answer. Just started walking toward me. Hey man, I'm talking to you. I took a step back. Still no response, just the sound of his shoes dragging over the dirt. Then another man appeared farther down the path, coming from the opposite direction. That's when it hit me. This wasn't random. Shit. I breathed and turned to run. The forest exploded with sound. Footsteps pounding behind me, someone shouting, "Grab her!" Branches whipped my face, stinging my skin. My phone slipped in my sweaty hand and I clutched it tight, the flashlight beam bouncing wildly. My lungs screamed, my chest felt like it might cave in. But I didn't stop. Ahead, through the blur of trees, I saw it, the faint glow of the parking lot almost there. Then a hand yanked my jacket from behind. I screamed and twisted, falling hard onto the dirt. My knee scraped raw as the man tried to pin me down. His breath was hot and foul against my face. I kicked as hard as I could, connecting with his jaw. There was a sick crack and he grunted, rolling to the side. The second one was sprinting toward us fast. I scrambled up, adrenaline flooding my veins, and ran like hell. My leg burned, my lungs clawed for air, but I didn't dare slow down. When I burst from the trail into the parking lot, I saw headlights, an approaching car. Relief surged through me like fire. I waved my arms, screaming, "Help, please!" The car slowed, honked once, and the two men stopped chasing. They stood just at the edge of the trees, watching. The driver's window rolled down a few inches. It was a woman, maybe in her 40s. Her voice wavered. "Are you okay?" "Call the cops," I yelled, pointing back toward the woods. "They're chasing me!" Her eyes went wide. She glanced past me into the dark, then reached for her phone. I dialed 911 myself, gasping the words between sobs. "Mill Creek Park, 2 men. They tried to grab me. Please hurry." The woman stayed in her car, whispering something I couldn't make out. I kept my eyes on the trees. The men were gone, or hiding. I didn't know which was worse. When red and blue lights finally flashed through the darkness 10 minutes later, I almost collapsed. Police searched the park. 20 minutes after that, one of the officers came back to me, his face grim. "We found 3 people," he said. 2 men and a woman. "Your roommate, she's claiming she didn't know anything. But there were drugs in her bag and messages on her phone." He hesitated before continuing. "She planned the whole thing with them. She was supposed to lure you here so they could rob you." I remember sitting in the back of the patrol car, shaking so badly my teeth clicked. They walked her past me in handcuffs. Her hair hung loose, face pale under the flashing lights. She didn't look scared. Didn't even look sorry. Just empty. She met my eyes and said quietly, almost conversationally, "It wasn't supposed to go like that." That line still haunts me. The robbery charges didn't stick. The others disappeared, and Lena got probation for drug possession. I moved out the next week, changed my number, stopped answering calls from unknown numbers altogether. But sometimes when I drive past Mill Creek Park at night, I see that same flickering light in the corner of the lot, blinking weakly through the fog. And my chest tightens all over again because I know she's out there somewhere, and she still knows where I live. I still remember the day I crammed everything I owned into the back of my beat-up gray Honda and drove away from my hometown in Missouri. I'd just graduated, and after months of firing off resumes, I finally landed a job, my first real one, at a logistics company in Cleveland, Ohio. It felt like all the late nights and anxiety had finally meant something. Leaving home wasn't easy, though. My parents were proud, but my mom cried the night before I left. She hugged me tight and whispered, "Just promise you'll call every Sunday, okay?" I smiled and said, "I promise." I didn't realize how much that promise would come to matter later. The company helped new hires relocate, which was a lifesaver since Cleveland rent was no joke. They had deals with a few apartment complexes close to downtown, And when HR asked if I was okay with sharing a 2-bedroom with another new hire, I said, yeah, sure. I figured it'd be nice having someone in the same boat. That's how I met Connor Wells, a tall, sandy-haired guy from Oregon who always wore spotless sneakers and carried himself with this smug, easy confidence that didn't quite match the nervous laugh he had. We met during onboarding week. He talked fast, loud, and loved saying things like streamlining efficiency and cross-department synergy, the kind of buzzword stuff that makes managers grin and coworkers tune out. Still, he seemed friendly enough. I wasn't looking to make waves, just to do my job and find my rhythm. Our apartment was modern and clean, white walls, stainless steel kitchen, furniture that looked straight out of an IKEA showroom. My room was on the right, Connor's on the left. The balcony faced the parking lot, catching that dull orange streetlight glow at night. For the first few weeks, things were fine. We were both busy, often eating takeout while half watching TV after work. Connor liked talking about himself, his internships, his big plans. At the office, he was everywhere at once, always laughing a little too loud, always volunteering for something. I was quieter, just focused. That's why when things started to feel off, it took me a while to trust my gut. The first moment came one Friday night, maybe 3 weeks in. He'd asked if I wanted to grab drinks with a few coworkers. I told him I was too tired, had some catch-up work to do. He grinned like he was humoring me. You know, dude, you can't get promoted sitting behind your laptop all night. I laughed, but the way he said it, half mocking, half pitying, made my skin prickle. Around 2 a.m., I woke to the sound of him stumbling in. Something clattered, glass maybe. I was about to get up and tell him to shut it when I heard him mumble under his breath, voice slurred and low. Guy thinks he's better than me, loser. I froze. My pulse jumped into my throat. Maybe he wasn't talking about me, I thought. Maybe he was just drunk and ranting. I forced myself back to sleep. But little things started happening after that. My toothbrush was always slightly moved from where I'd left it, my laptop charger, unplugged in the morning even though I always made sure it was charging. Once, my favorite mug, the one my sister gave me before I left home, was shattered in the sink. Dude, maybe you dropped it and forgot, Connor said with that same careless shrug. It irritated me, but I let it go. Then one morning, my phone alarm didn't go off. The battery was dead completely. I'm obsessive about plugging it in, but when I checked, the charger was half pulled out of the wall. I barely made it to work. That night, I asked casually, Hey, you didn't happen to unplug my phone last night, did you? The cable was loose this morning. He looked up from his cereal, spoon paused midair, and smiled just a little too long. Why the hell would I unplug your phone? I don't know. Maybe it got bumped or something. He shrugged, still smiling. Sounds like a you problem. Maybe set 2 alarms next time. The way he said it, so smug, so amused, made me clench my jaw. After that, I started feeling it constantly. That quiet tension in the air when he was around. I'd come home to find the thermostat set to freezing, or the bathroom light left on all night. Once I came home early and caught him in my room. Dude, what the hell are you doing in here? He jumped, eyes wide, then gave a crooked smile. Oh, I was just checking if you borrowed my notebook. Chill out. Stay out of my room, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. He grinned again, like it was funny to him, like he enjoyed the way it made me tense. A few nights later, I woke around 3 a.m. to a faint light bleeding through the crack under my bedroom door. The soft, flickering blue of the living room TV. I got up, still half asleep, and opened my door. Connor was standing by the kitchen counter. He wasn't watching TV. He was just standing there, completely still. His face was turned toward my door, but he didn't move, didn't blink. Just stared for 3 long seconds before murmuring, "Couldn't sleep. Don't freak out." Then he turned and walked back to his room, shutting the door softly. I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, listening for the sound of his footsteps. The next day at work, he was all charm again, laughing with coworkers, bragging about how he'd stayed up late grinding on a client report. Watching him, I started to wonder if I really was losing it. Maybe I was just exhausted, paranoid from the stress of moving, the new job, everything. But then something happened that tore that illusion apart. One Thursday morning, I woke up to chaos, my work files scattered all over the floor. The neat stack of manila folders I'd organized the night before was wrecked. Pages torn, papers out of order. I just stood there staring, my pulse spiking. "You've got to be kidding me," I shouted. Connor's door opened. He stepped out, hair messy, yawning like nothing had happened. He looked at the mess, then at me, and smirked. "What, did a ghost knock your shit over?" I took a step toward him. "You think this is funny? Did you come into my room again?" He chuckled under his breath. "Man, you need to chill. You're losing it." "I'm serious, Connor. Don't touch my stuff." He rolled his eyes and walked away, muttering, "Maybe lock your door next time, genius." The thing was, our bedroom doors didn't have locks. Only the bathroom did. After that, I started taking precautions. I hid my work laptop and files under the bed, kept my phone under my pillow, and wedged a chair against my door so it would scrape if anyone tried to open it. For a few nights, nothing happened. I started to think maybe he'd gotten bored, that maybe it was over. Then, one night around 2 a.m., I woke to the faintest creak, a slow, deliberate shift of weight on the wooden floor near my bed. My heart kicked into overdrive. I kept my eyes half open, breathing slow, pretending to sleep. And then I saw him, a dark outline moving near my desk. Connor. I could see the edge of his hoodie and the weak light bleeding through the blinds. He was crouched low, hands hovering near my drawers. I waited a few seconds, my pulse pounding in my ears, then flicked on my bedside lamp. "Connor, what the hell are you doing?" He froze just for a beat, then bolted out of the room. I leapt up, adrenaline surging, and chased him down the hall. He slammed his bedroom door before I reached him. I pounded on it, shouting, "Open the damn door, man!" "What were you doing in my room?" No answer. "Connor, I saw you." Finally, he yelled through the door, his voice sharp and defensive. "You're out of your mind." "You're imagining things." I stood there, shaking, every nerve on fire. That was the moment I knew I needed to get out. But the lease was joint, and management had made it clear. Breaking it would cost a fortune unless both tenants agreed. The next few days were unbearable. He didn't talk to me, didn't even look at me at work. He started sitting at a different table at lunch. But sometimes I'd catch him staring, just long enough to make my skin crawl. Then out of nowhere, he stopped showing up to work. By lunchtime, word spread. Connor had been fired. HR said it was for inappropriate messages to a coworker. Harassment. I remember feeling the first wave of relief I'd felt in months. Maybe I could finally breathe again. But that feeling shattered the moment I opened the apartment door that evening. The place was wrecked. Couch cushions slashed, TV screen shattered, lamps overturned. My room looked like a crime scene. Drawers dumped, clothes torn, mattress flipped. My laptop was gone. I called the apartment manager immediately, voice trembling. They told me to file a police report. I took photos of everything, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. The manager said they'd go after him legally since his name was still on the lease. I didn't stay there that night. I packed a bag and crashed on a coworker's couch. For weeks afterward, I jumped at every sound, the creak of pipes, footsteps in the hallway, a door clicking shut somewhere nearby. The cops never found my laptop and Connor never came back. A neighbor later told me they'd seen him carrying garbage bags to his car around 2 a.m. the night before he was fired. He must have known what was coming and decided to take it out on me. To this day, I still don't know what set him off. Maybe he saw me as competition. Maybe he was just unhinged. All I know is every night before I sleep, I double-check every lock in my apartment, and sometimes, when the house is quiet, I wake up convinced I can hear someone moving, softly, carefully across the floor. I still remember the first night I moved into my dorm at Northland University, mid-August in Minnesota. The air so thick and humid it clung to my skin like syrup. The whole campus buzzed with that jittery excitement only freshmen really understand. I'd driven 6 hours from my hometown in Missouri in my parents' old Ford Escape. The thing packed to the roof with suitcases, boxes, a mini fridge, and a cheap Walmart lamp I'd convinced myself would somehow make the place feel like home. My roommate's name was Darren Cole. The housing office had matched us randomly. All I knew about him came from a flimsy card. Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Mechanical engineering. When I first pushed open the door to 213B, he was already there. Sitting on his bed, headphones in, face lit by his laptop screen. He didn't look up at first, just gave a quick nod like I'd interrupted a thought. Hey man. I'm Jordan, I said, dropping my duffel beside the bed. He pulled one earbud out, glanced over, and said flatly, "Yeah, Darren." That was it. No smile, no handshake. He went right back to whatever was on his screen. I tried not to take it personally. Everyone handles college differently, I told myself. Some people get loud, others shut down. Maybe he was just the quiet type. For the first few days, we hardly talked. He wasn't rude, just absent, like his mind was somewhere else entirely. The room stayed spotless, his side especially. He left early, came back late, and when he was there, he sat at his desk staring at his laptop with the curtains drawn tight. One evening, I called my mom while walking back from dinner. "Yeah, he's quiet," I said, trying not to sound uneasy. She laughed. "That's better than loud, right? At least he's clean." "Yeah," I forced a chuckle. "Yeah, that's true." By then, I'd found my own rhythm. Friends from English class, a girl named Lisa from the next floor. We'd hang out in the lounge, play ping pong, gossip about professors and dumb campus rumors. When I got back, Darren was usually gone for the weekend. The silence was weird but manageable. Until that one night in late October. That Friday had been brutal, midterms closing in, so I spent the day buried in the library. When I came back around 8, Darren wasn't there. His bed was perfectly made, laptop closed, desk untouched. "Probably went home again," I muttered, tossing my backpack down. I threw on my headset and started gaming. The only sound was the faint tick of the old radiator when the heat kicked in. The room felt heavy, like the air itself was listening. Around 11, I leaned back, stretched, and took off my headphones. The silence hit me, dense and absolute. Then something moved. It was small, a flicker in my peripheral vision near the far wall. My gaze locked on the dark space under Darren's bed. His mini fridge sat there, a few storage bins too, but no, something had shifted. I leaned forward, squinting. Then I saw it again, a hand. I jerked backward, heart slamming in my chest. "What the hell?" From the darkness came Darren's voice, calm and almost amused. "Oh, you saw me." He crawled out slowly, eyes unreadable. His hoodie was half unzipped, his hair flat against his head like he'd been under there for hours. "Dude," I stammered, trying to laugh, but my throat was dry. "What the hell are you doing under there?" He hesitated, just long enough to make my skin crawl, then smirked. "Just messing around, man. Wanted to see if you'd notice in 3 hours." He shrugged. "Guess I lost track of time." I stared at him, waiting for him to crack a grin, to explain more, but he didn't. He just brushed dust from his hoodie and looked at me, eyes flat and dark like he hadn't been joking at all. He said, "I'm gonna brush my teeth," and walked out like it was the most normal thing in the world. The door clicked shut, leaving me in that heavy humming silence. I sat there for a long time, staring at the empty space where he'd been, trying to figure out what the hell that had been about. When he came back, I pretended to be scrolling my phone. He got into bed without a word, turned off his lamp, and that was that. For a few weeks, things went back to normal, or what passed for normal with Darren. He barely spoke, barely made a sound. I convinced myself it had been some weird prank or social experiment or whatever. One afternoon, I told Lisa about it while we walked to class, crunching through piles of fallen leaves. "He hid under your bed?" she said, half laughing, but with this nervous edge in her voice. "No," I corrected. "His bed." He was under his own bed. She wrinkled her nose. "That's even weirder." "Yeah. Jordan, that's not just weird. That's creepy as hell." I didn't argue. About a month later, things got worse. It was a Wednesday night. I remember because I had a paper due Friday and was up late typing. The dorm was quiet except for the rhythmic clack of my keyboard and the hum of the radiator. Around 10, Darren came in. He didn't say a word, just dropped his bag on the floor and went straight into the bathroom. When he came back, I was still at my desk. He sat on his bed, shoulders slumped, and just stared, not at me, but straight ahead like there was something in the dark only he could see. "You good, man?" I finally asked. He blinked and looked at me, like he'd forgotten I existed. "Yeah, just tired." He turned off his lamp and lay down. By midnight, I was half asleep when I heard it, a faint metallic tapping like something brushing against metal. My eyes opened, but the room was pitch black. The noise stopped. I stared into the dark for a minute, heart beating too fast. Maybe he was fixing something, I told myself. Darren was always fidgeting with his stuff. Silence. Then that feeling, cold and certain, that I wasn't alone. I turned my head toward the edge of my bed, and my blood went ice cold. Darren was standing right beside me. His outline was barely visible, backlit by the thin glow from the hallway seeping under the door. His face was blank, his eyes locked on me. In his hand, he held something heavy and dark. A hammer. I flinched, stumbling backward into the wall, my sheets tangling around my legs. "What the hell, Darren?" He didn't move. For a moment, he just stood there, breathing softly through his nose. Then slowly, he lowered the hammer. "Relax," he said quietly. "I was just fixing my bed." "In the dark?" I snapped, my voice shaking. "You were standing over me with that thing." He blinked, expression empty. "You were moving around. Thought I woke you up." I stared at him, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. His tone was too calm, too level. "Just go back to bed," I said finally. "Please." He nodded once, muttered something that sounded like sorry, and climbed back into his bed. I didn't sleep again that night. I sat up until sunrise, jumping at every creak and whisper in the room. The next morning, I went straight to housing services. I didn't tell them everything, just said I wasn't comfortable and needed a transfer. They told me it might take a week or two. That night, I locked the door and stayed with a friend across campus. I told Darren I had a group project that would keep me out for a few nights. He just nodded, no questions. When the approval finally came through, I waited until he left for class, packed all my things, and got out. I didn't leave a note. I didn't tell anyone where I'd gone. I didn't even walk down that hallway again. Months later, someone mentioned Darren had been suspended. Something about an incident in the dorms. Nobody seemed to know the details, and I didn't ask. But sometimes, late at night, I still see that moment. Him standing in the dark, hammer in hand, staring at me like he'd already decided something. And I can't help wondering what would have happened if I hadn't woken up. I remember the first time I moved to the city. I just landed my first real job after college, an entry-level position at a marketing firm downtown, and everything felt new, loud, and fast. Back in Waverly, the loudest sound at night was a cricket outside my window or a train groaning past the edge of town. But here, even at 2 a.m, sirens still echoed down the streets like restless ghosts. I didn't know a soul except for one person. Hannah. She was one of my co-workers, a bright, kind woman in her early 30s with an easy laugh and this calm, steady way about her. Everyone loved her at the office. She brought donuts on Fridays, remembered birthdays, and somehow made the chaos of marketing deadlines almost pleasant. One afternoon after our shift, I was hunched over my phone, scrolling through apartment listings and frowning at the ridiculous prices. Hannah noticed immediately. "Still looking for a place, huh?" she asked, sliding her chair closer. "Yeah," I sighed. "Everything's either too expensive or looks like it's crawling with mold." She paused, tapping her pen against her mug. "You know what? I've got an extra room. Technically, it's my roommate's, but he's been saying he might move out soon. Why don't you crash in the living room for a few days until you find something? Seriously, I don't mind." I hesitated. I don't want to be a burden. "Emily," she said, smiling, "you'd be doing me a favor. I get creeped out alone sometimes." Her warmth was impossible to refuse, I agreed. I didn't know then that it would be one of the most haunting choices of my life. Hannah lived in a small 2-story duplex in a quiet neighborhood on the east side. The upper floor was under renovation, so everything we used was downstairs. There were 2 bedrooms, Hannah's large and cozy, draped in white curtains with plants on every surface, and the smaller one that belonged to her roommate, Caleb. The living room was roomy enough for my air mattress, and for the first time it felt like I had a little space of my own, temporary but safe enough. Caleb came home the same evening I moved in. The door creaked open around 8 while Hannah and I were arranging my bedding. I turned and froze. He wasn't what I expected. Tall but thin, with greasy blonde hair hanging into his face. He wore a dark green hoodie and black jeans even though it was sweltering outside. A scar ran through his left eyebrow down to his cheek, giving his pale eye a slightly sunken look. His expression was blank, unreadable. "Hey, Caleb," Hannah said cheerfully. "This is my friend from work, Emily. She's staying for a few days while she finds a place." Caleb's eyes flicked toward me. For a moment, he didn't move or speak. Then he muttered, "Sure," and walked past us into his room, closing the door with a hard click. I blinked. "Is he always that friendly?" Hannah laughed softly. "He's just quiet. Little awkward, that's all. He's been through a lot, I think, but he's harmless." Harmless. That word would stick in my head for months. At first, everything was fine. Hannah and I both worked long hours, too drained most evenings to talk much. Caleb stayed in his room. Sometimes I'd hear his door open or close, footsteps crossing the hallway, but he rarely said a word. Then, about 4 days in, something felt off. I woke up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom. The apartment was dark, except for a faint yellow glow spilling from the kitchen. I assumed Hannah was up late, maybe eating cereal or working on her laptop. But when I peeked over the back of the couch, it wasn't Hannah. Caleb stood by the sink, motionless except for his hands. He was scrubbing something small under the running faucet, something wrapped in a piece of cloth, then placing it carefully into a plastic grocery bag. I froze. The faint hiss of water filled the silence. He didn't see me. When he finished, he tied the bag tightly, his fingers trembling slightly, and walked down the hall. The floorboards creaked under his steps. A second later, his door shut, followed by the sharp click of the lock. I told myself I was overreacting. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe he was cleaning. I don't know, a tool, a shoe? It wasn't my business, but the next night it happened again. The same sharp tang of bleach filled the air. The same steady hiss of running water. Only this time he noticed me. "Why are you awake?" His voice was low and flat, like it belonged to someone imitating human speech. I froze on the couch, clutching my blanket. I couldn't sleep," I stammered. "Too much coffee, I guess." I tried to sound light, casual, but my heart was pounding so hard it hurt. Caleb tilted his head slightly, eyes catching the dim light from the kitchen. "You should try sleeping," he whispered. "People see things at night that aren't really there." He smiled, just a small, stiff pull at the corners of his mouth, and leaned closer, close enough that I felt his breath against my face. "Good night, Emily." Then he turned and walked away, disappearing into his room. The click of his door closing echoed through the apartment. I lay there shaking, my skin crawling under the blanket. The next morning, I told Hannah everything. "Hannah, I'm serious," I said, voice trembling. "He's up every night washing something in the sink. I smelled bleach, like industrial-level bleach, and he came up to me last night. It wasn't normal." Hannah frowned, her spoon frozen halfway to her coffee mug.
"Caleb, no way."
"He's weird, yeah, but not dangerous. I've known him for 2 years. He's never done anything." "But you don't know what he's doing at night," I insisted. "You sleep through it." She sighed, rubbing her forehead. "Emily, I get it. You're anxious, new job, new city, strange roommate. It's easy to imagine the worst." "I'm not imagining this, Hannah," I snapped. "I saw it. He's hiding something." Before she could respond, the front door opened. Caleb walked in, holding a brown paper bag. "Morning, ladies," he said with a grin that was too wide, too forced. Neither of us answered. The silence was heavy. Hannah finally spoke, trying to ease it. "Hey, Caleb. What do you do in the kitchen at night anyway? Emily says she's been hearing stuff." He stopped. The grin vanished. His expression hardened into something colder. "Why does that bother your friend?" he said slowly. "No reason," Hannah said quickly. "We were just curious." "I wash my clothes," he muttered. "In the sink?" I asked before I could stop myself. "It's quieter than the machine. You wash your clothes in the kitchen sink?" His head turned sharply toward me, his eyes narrowing to pale slits. "Yeah, problem?" I shook my head, throat dry. "No." He dropped the bag on the counter. "Fine, I'll stop." Then he walked out again, slamming the door behind him. When the silence finally settled, I turned to Hannah. "I want to look inside his room." "Emily, don't," she said immediately. "That's invasion of privacy." "Something's wrong with him," I said. "I just want to know what before." Before she could stop me, I grabbed a bobby pin from her dresser and went straight for Caleb's door. Of course it was locked. "Emily, stop," Hannah said, grabbing my wrist. "You don't understand," I pleaded. If we don't check now, we might regret it later. She pulled my hand away. No, you're being paranoid. We argued until our voices filled the apartment, sharp and scared. Finally, I grabbed my bag and stormed out, crashing at a friend's place that night. I never went back. 6 months later, I was home in Waverly when 2 detectives came to my parents' door. One of them, a tall woman named Detective Larson, showed her badge. You were living with a woman named Hannah Ward last year? My stomach dropped. Yeah, why? What happened? She's been reported missing, Larson said gently. Her family hasn't heard from her in over 3 months. We found her body 2 days ago under a bridge off Old Creek Road. My knees gave out. I couldn't breathe. They said the body was badly decomposed. It took weeks to identify her. And then came the name. Her roommate, Caleb Reeves, had been arrested for second-degree murder. I felt the blood drain from my body. They told me he was the one who'd called her parents to report her missing. He'd even joined the search efforts, pretending to care. But his phone's GPS and store receipts placed him near the bridge the night she disappeared. When the police searched his room, they found multiple bags of blood-stained cloths sealed with bleach residue. They also found women's jewelry, including Hannah's silver bracelet, the one she wore every day to work. During interrogation, Caleb said he'd found her dead after an argument about rent. He claimed he panicked and dumped the body because he didn't want to be blamed. He was sentenced to life in prison. And I still remember the way he looked at me that night. The glint in his eye. The whisper of bleach swirling in the sink. Sometimes I lie awake wondering if I had stayed one more week, just one more sleepless night on that couch, would it have been me instead of Hannah? I never thought I'd look back on that year and still feel my skin crawl. It started the summer I turned 22, the same summer I moved to Oregon for college. I'd just been accepted into a transfer program at Willowed Valley University, and I was desperate to get out of my dusty hometown in Arizona. I wanted to start fresh, meet new people, finally feel like my life was moving forward. But moving out of state isn't cheap. I was scraping by on what little savings I had from my part-time gas station job, plus whatever my mom could spare. So when I found a Craigslist ad for a room in a 2-bedroom apartment, cheap 15 minutes from campus, utilities included, I jumped at it. The ad read, $550 a month. Utilities included, female roommate preferred, clean, quiet, drama-free. Text for photos. I texted immediately. A few minutes later, I got a reply. Her, hey, I'm Callie. The room's still available. You can come check it out today if you want. Me, perfect. Thanks, what time works for you? Her, anytime after 4? That smiley face made her seem friendly, normal. Maybe this was my lucky break. I got there around 4:30. The apartment was in a beige 3-story building tucked behind a strip mall, 7-Eleven, a laundromat, and a pizza place. Not fancy, but not sketchy either. Just typical college town filler. Callie opened the door before I even knocked. She was taller than me, maybe 5'9", with jet black hair brushing her shoulders. Her eyeliner made her gray-blue eyes stand out, and her skin had that powdered paleness of someone who spent more time inside than out. Hey, you must be Laurel, she said with a wide smile. Yeah, I said, smiling back. Thanks for letting me come by. No problem at all, she said, stepping aside. Come in. Ignore the boxes, I'm still cleaning up from my last roommate. The place was surprisingly cute. A small living room with a sagging second-hand couch and a scratched-up coffee table. The kitchen was tiny, peeling white cabinets, a faint whiff of vanilla candles. It felt lived in. She showed me the room, plain but bright carpeted floor, a closet, a window facing a maple tree. It's $600 including everything, she said. But if you pay on time, I'll drop it to $550. I blinked. Seriously? She nodded. Yeah, I'd rather have someone reliable than chase people for rent. That was all it took. I moved in the next week. At first, Callie was quirky but harmless. Quiet, a little awkward, but nice enough. The first night after I moved in, she suggested pizza downstairs. I figured, sure, good roommates start with good vibes. We sat in a booth by the window, splitting a medium pepperoni. So, what are you studying? She asked, sipping her soda. Psychology. You? I'm done with school, she said. I do freelance graphic design, mostly from home. Oh, that's cool. She smiled, tilting her head slightly. You know, you kind of remind me of someone. Yeah? Who? She squinted, studying me. You look so much like a young Brad Pitt. I laughed. I wish. No, really, her voice was serious. It's uncanny. The jawline, the nose, even the hair. You could be his double in Legends of the Fall. I chuckled awkwardly and changed the topic, but she kept circling back. 5 or 6 times during dinner, she'd giggle that high, childlike laugh and say, "No, seriously, it's freaking me out." I told myself she was just socially weird. Nervous talker, maybe. But the way she stared, it lingered. A few nights later, she offered to show me her art projects. Sure, I said, curious. Her bedroom was usually closed off. When she opened it, a wave of perfume hit me. Sweet and artificial, like roses dipped in vanilla syrup. Then I froze. Her walls were covered with photos of Brad Pitt, movie stills, posters, magazine clippings, even printed screenshots. Above her bed hung a framed Fight Club shot, him shirtless mid-punch. Oh wow, I said, forcing a light tone. You're a big fan, huh? She smiled at the photo. I've been watching his movies since I was 12. He's perfect. Something in her voice made my stomach knot. There was no joke in it. Then she turned sharply toward me. See what I mean now? What? You look just like him. I laughed nervously. Yeah, maybe if you squint. Her smile deepened. No, Laurel. I mean it. Her tone was low, too calm. I mumbled something about needing water and escaped to the kitchen. That night I couldn't sleep. The hallway still reeked faintly of her perfume. Over the next few weeks, things got stranger. Callie barely talked to me. She'd slip into her room when she came home, giggling to herself through the wall. Sometimes I'd hear her whispering, her voice soft, rhythmic, then another burst of that same childish laugh. Once I was sitting on the couch doing homework. I turned to grab my drink and she was standing in the hallway watching me. I jumped. Jesus, Callie, you scared me. She didn't respond right away, just that tiny smile. Then, I like your hair down, she said softly. You really do look like him when you wear it that way. Thanks, I muttered, my throat tight. She gave a short, fluttery giggle and slipped into her room, shutting the door with a soft click. I sat there a long time, pulse thudding in my throat. That night, around 2 a.m., maybe 3 weeks later, things escalated. I woke to a faint metallic clinking. At first, I thought it was coming from outside, maybe someone fumbling with the vending machine near the building entrance. But then I realized the sound was inside the apartment, the unmistakable scrape of a deadbolt turning back and forth. I grabbed my phone and eased open my bedroom door. The hallway was pitch black, only a faint spill of streetlight through the blinds. That's when I saw her, Callie's silhouette standing by the front door. Her face was pressed close to it, whispering something, her fingers twisting the lock again and again. Callie? I said quietly. She didn't move. Didn't even flinch. I stepped closer. Are you okay? The sound stopped. Her body went rigid. Then, without turning around, she slowly rotated her head toward me. In the thin light, her eyes gleamed wide and glassy, unblinking. Callie, I whispered, my throat dry. What the hell are you doing? She blinked once, making sure he doesn't leave. My skin prickled. Who? Her lips twitched and that eerie, high-pitched giggle slipped out. Brad. I froze. What? He's here, she whispered, barely audible. He comes to visit sometimes, but he keeps trying to leave. I stood there, my mind blank, heart slamming against my ribs. Finally, she turned back to the door and began humming softly. A slow, tuneless hum that made my stomach twist. I locked my bedroom door that night and didn't sleep at all. The next morning, I texted my friend Megan, I think my roommate's losing it. I need to get out. Megan, what happened? Long story. Can I crash with you for a few days? She texted back almost instantly. Yes. I decided I'd pack and leave by the weekend. Callie barely came out of her room all day. I could hear her pacing and muttering through the thin wall. That evening, while I was making toast, she appeared in the kitchen out of nowhere. Going somewhere? She asked, voice flat. My stomach dropped. Yeah. My friend's birthday. I might stay over. She tilted her head, smiling faintly. You should stay home. He doesn't like when people leave. Who doesn't? She just giggled, soft, breathy, and walked back to her room. That was it. I texted Megan, "Come get me first thing in the morning." The next day around 9 a.m., there was a knock on the door. I thought it was her, but when I opened it, 2 uniformed officers stood there. "Morning, ma'am," one said. "Does a Callie Monroe live here?" "Yes," I said, startled. "Why, what's going on?" "Mind if we come in?" I stepped aside, heart hammering. One officer scanned the apartment. "We have a warrant for her arrest," he said. "We believe she may be connected to a homicide that took place last year. Do you know where she is right now?" I shook my head. She's in her room, I think." Then, a loud crash. The sharp crack of shattering glass. The officers drew their weapons and sprinted toward her door. "Callie, open the door," one shouted. No answer. They kicked again and again until the wood splintered apart. I followed without thinking and stopped dead in the doorway. Her window was wide open. The curtains flapped wildly in the wind. She was gone. Then a smell hit me, thick, rotting, unmistakable. One officer yanked open the closet door. I gagged. A human hand was sticking out from beneath a blanket, gray, swollen, discolored. "Jesus Christ!" one of them yelled into his radio. "We need backup and forensics now." I stumbled backward, choking on air. Under that blanket lay a decomposed man's body, with a paper mask taped to his face. A printed photo of Brad Pitt's smile. The coroner later confirmed his name, Ben Carter, her previous roommate. They sealed the apartment as a crime scene. I was questioned for hours before they finally let me go. That night I stayed in a cheap motel across town. My hands wouldn't stop shaking as I called my mom and told her everything. She cried. I cried. For days afterward, whenever I closed my eyes, I saw her pale face turning toward me in the dark. 3 days later, waiting for the bus near campus, I looked across the street and my heart nearly stopped. A woman stood at the corner wearing jeans, a gray hoodie, and a Brad Pitt mask. Even from across the road, I knew it was her. I grabbed my phone, called the police, voice trembling. But by the time they arrived, she was gone. A few weeks later, I moved again, this time across the state. I thought maybe I could finally start over. Then one morning, on my way to work, traffic slowed near Main Street. Flashing lights, police cars. A crowd gathered beneath a huge Once Upon a Time in Hollywood billboard. As I got closer, I saw what everyone was staring at, and my blood turned to ice. It was Callie. Her body hung tangled in the power lines below the billboard. Her clothes torn, skin blackened and burned, her face frozen in a twisted grin. The wind made her sway gently beneath Brad Pitt's giant printed face. That night I sat in my car outside my new apartment, unable to move. Her giggle echoed in my head, shrill, hollow, looping endlessly. Sometimes I still wake to the sound of the deadbolt turning, the faint reek of cheap perfume drifting through the dark, and her voice soft, close, almost tender. "He's here. Don't let him leave." I never use Craigslist anymore, and I'll never forget the way she smiled when she said, "You look just like him." I never thought sharing a house would mess with my head the way it did. Back in 2018, during my junior year at Ridgeview State University in Oregon, things were falling apart. I didn't have a place lined up for the next semester. My old roommate had dropped out. My girlfriend transferred to a college in Washington, and the rest of my friends had already signed leases months before. I was caught between going back to dorm life or just taking a semester off. Then, right around finals week, I ran into this guy, Liam Turner. We'd done a class project together the year before. Nothing memorable, just one of those split the work and never speak again partnerships. He recognized me first. "Hey man, you got a place for next semester?" he asked. I laughed. "Nope, you offering?" He grinned a little. "Yeah, actually. I've got a lease on this old 2-bedroom near campus. Rent's cheap, but I need a roommate. You in?" I didn't even think about it. "Yeah, sure. I'm in." It felt like a lucky break at the time. The house wasn't anything special. Peeling white siding, floors that complained with every step, and a porch that looked like one good storm could send it crashing into the yard. But I liked it. It felt like freedom after 2 years of dorm rooms that smelled like ramen and sweat. It sat on Holloway Street, just a few blocks from the university. 2 bedrooms upstairs, 1 bathroom up there, another one tucked behind the kitchen downstairs. When I moved in, Liam helped me carry my boxes inside. He wasn't unfriendly, just quiet. "You can take the room on the left," he said. "The one on the right gets cold as hell at night." That was it. No small talk, no beer to celebrate, no welcome home. Just instructions. I figured he was one of those guys who preferred silence, which was fine. I was the same way. Classes started, and for the first month, things were fine. We weren't friends exactly, but we coexisted easily enough. We'd pass each other in the kitchen or the hallway and exchange short automatic conversations. "You got class today?" He'd ask. "Yeah, 10 a.m. you?" "Nah, day off." And that was the full extent of our social interaction. But then small things started to feel off. The first time it happened was early October, around 2 in the morning. I woke up to a sound, a rhythmic clicking, like a door creaking open and slamming shut over and over again. Click, creak, slam, creak, slam. The repetition was too steady to be wind or pipes. I sat up, heart thudding, grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight. The sound was coming from downstairs. "Liam?" I called, my voice low, uncertain. "You down there?" No response. The moment my foot hit the last stair, the sound stopped. Silence, thick and absolute. The kitchen was empty. The living room was dark. The front door was locked tight. The hairs on my arms stood up, but I told myself it was just the house settling. Old wood expands, right? I clung to that thought and went back upstairs. The next morning, while he poured cereal into a chipped bowl, I asked, "Hey, did you hear anything last night? Like doors creaking or something?" He looked up, spoon in hand, and shook his head. "Nah, man. Slept like a rock." I gave a nervous laugh. "Guess the place just makes weird noises." He smiled, barely. "Yeah, it does that." The way he said it made me pause. It wasn't casual. It was almost like he knew exactly what I'd heard. Then came the knocking. About a week later, around 3 in the morning, I woke up to 3 slow, deliberate knocks on my bedroom door. Then silence. "Liam?" I mumbled, still half asleep. Nothing. I waited a minute, then got up and opened the door. The hallway was pitch black, quiet except for the low hum of the refrigerator downstairs. Liam's door was closed, no light under it. I didn't want to wake him, so I went back to bed, pulling the covers up like I was 12 again. 2 nights later, it happened again. Same time, same knocks. The next morning, I brought it up at breakfast. "Hey, did you knock on my door last night?" He looked up mid-bite, eyebrows raised. "No, why would I?" "I don't know," I said. "Maybe you needed something?" He smirked. "Man, you're dreaming. You sure you're not sleepwalking or something?" His voice was playful, but the smirk didn't reach his eyes. It lingered there too long, like he was studying my reaction. Then came November. One night I was cramming for a midterm, half asleep at my desk around 1:30 a.m. when I heard it, footsteps downstairs. Slow, heavy, deliberate. They creaked across the living room, paused, then shifted toward the kitchen. I grabbed my phone and texted Liam. Me. "Hey, you up?" Liam. "Yeah." Me. "You downstairs?" A pause. Liam. "No, are you?" I stared at the screen until the words blurred. Me. "No, I thought you were." We both met halfway on the stairs, barefoot, phones in hand like makeshift weapons. The house was still except for our breathing. Together we checked every room, every window, every door. Everything was locked tight. That was the first time I realized it wasn't just me hearing things. "Nothing," Liam said finally, eyes scanning the room like he was trying to read my face. "Maybe someone broke in and left." "How?" "There's no way," I said. "The back door's dead-bolted." He shrugged, sipping his coffee. "Could have been an animal. Raccoon, maybe." I let out a shaky laugh. "You ever heard a raccoon walk across hardwood floors?" He chuckled. "Well, maybe you should sleep with a baseball bat, just in case." The way he said it, half joking, half serious, made it worse somehow. A couple weeks later, things escalated. It was around 2 in the morning when I jolted awake to the sound of my bedroom door slamming. Not knocking, slamming. Over and over, like someone was kicking it from the other side. The whole frame shuddered. My chest locked up. I couldn't move, couldn't even scream. It went on for 5, maybe 6 seconds, then stopped dead. I sat there in the dark, drenched in sweat, listening to the pounding in my ears. I waited another minute before I dared to move. When I finally cracked the door open, the hallway was pitch black, the air unnaturally cold, like someone had just been standing there, breathing against it. That morning at breakfast, I couldn't hold it in. "Man, I'm serious," I said, my voice trembling a little. "Did you mess with me last night?" Liam frowned. "What are you talking about?" Someone slammed my door, hard. He blinked slowly, then shrugged. "Maybe you dreamed it again." I wanted to believe him, but I couldn't that night. I jammed a chair under my doorknob before going to bed. 2 days later, I got a Snapchat request from a guy named Riley Bowman. I recognized the name. He went to Ridgeview same year as us. I'd seen him with Liam a few times at parties, but we'd never talked. The moment I added him, a message popped up. "Riley, yo, you live with Liam Turner, right?" Me, "Yeah, why?" Riley, "We used to hang out." "Listen, bro, has he been doing weird shit at the house?" That froze me. Me, "What do you mean?" Riley, "Like noises, doors knocking, that kind of thing." I felt my stomach tighten. Me, "Yeah, actually." "How'd you know that?" Riley, "Because he told me." "Dude thinks it's funny. He's been doing that to you for weeks." My blood ran cold. Me, "You serious?" Riley, "Dead serious. He did the same thing to another guy he lived with sophomore year. Gets a kick out of scaring people. Said he hoped you'd move out so he could get the whole place to himself." I stared at the screen, fingers numb. Riley, "He even asked me to help once. One night I actually went over, and we made noises in the kitchen while he texted the dude upstairs. I felt sick about it. We stopped being friends after that. He's got issues, man." I just sat there staring at my phone, replaying every sound every night. The night we'd both heard footsteps downstairs. He must have been pretending, acting like he didn't know. I felt physically sick. The next morning, I waited until he came down. He looked half asleep, hair sticking up, holding a steaming mug of coffee. "We need to talk," I said. He blinked, confused. "About what?" "About all the shit you've been pulling." He frowned. "What are you talking about?" "You know exactly what I'm talking about. The noises, the knocking, everything." He laughed, sharp and dismissive. "You're losing it, dude," Riley told me. I snapped. "He said you bragged about it, about how you were trying to freak me out." His face went blank. Then that smirk came back. "Man, you believe everything you hear?" "So you're saying he's lying?" "He's got beef with me," Liam said, tone flat. "Just trying to stir shit." I stared at him. "So you didn't do it?" He shrugged, the corners of his mouth twitching. "Maybe once or twice as a joke. Didn't know you were that jumpy." Then he laughed, actually laughed, and brushed past me into the kitchen. That was the moment I knew I couldn't live there anymore. The house changed after that. It felt heavier, like the walls were holding their breath. Every creak sounded like him waiting, watching. I started locking my door every night, even though the old latch barely held. Then, one night around 1 a.m., I woke up to whispering outside my room. Soft. Measured. I couldn't make out the words. Then came a faint tapping, like fingertips drumming on the wall. I sat up, flicked on my lamp, and said loudly, "Liam, knock it off." Silence. Then faintly, a voice whispered back through the dark, "You're no fun anymore." It was him. That was it. I packed my things the next morning. When I told him I was leaving, he didn't argue. He just smirked and said, "Guess you couldn't handle it, huh?" I stayed with a friend off campus for the rest of the semester. A few weeks later, word spread that Liam had transferred mid-year. Riley messaged me again not long after. "He's doing it again," he wrote. To his new roommate. But that guy called the cops, said Liam was sneaking into his room while he slept. Even now, years later, I still get chills thinking about it. How long I'd lived there unaware of what he was doing. How close he'd been every night, listening, watching, playing his little game. And the worst part? Some nights when I'm trying to fall asleep in my new apartment, I swear I hear it again. 3 slow knocks. I never thought that quiet job I took that fall would be the reason I can't sleep anymore. Back then I was 27, recently divorced, broke, and desperate for anything steady. My cousin told me about a small residential boarding home outside Eugene, Oregon. A 2-story colonial that looked sweet and harmless from the outside. Willow Rest Home, the sign read in faded blue paint. the ad said, room and meals included. Seeking live-in help for cleaning and light caregiving. Must be reliable and compassionate. That last word, compassionate, stuck with me. I'd waited tables and cleaned Airbnbs, so caring for the elderly didn't sound bad. At least it promised quiet. The owners were two older women, Edna and Marlene, friends for decades, or so they said. Edna was technically the owner. Her name was on the deed. But Marlene ran everything. Edna was in her late 70s, frail, soft-spoken, with trembling hands and a white bun that always seemed to be coming loose. Marlene, maybe mid-60s, was sharper. She moved briskly, always talking about keeping things efficient. The place housed 7 residents, older or disabled folks who couldn't live entirely on their own. Each room had 2 beds except the top floor, which belonged to Edna and Marlene. I remember thinking it was strange that they shared a room when there were 2 other empty ones upstairs, but I didn't ask. The day I started, Marlene gave me a whirlwind tour. This is the kitchen. Label everything you cook. Left fridges for staff, rights for residents. Don't mix that up, Honorable. Got it, I said, trying to keep up as she clipped down the narrow hallway. You'll mop every evening after supper, vacuum Wednesdays and Saturdays, and make sure everyone's laundry's done. Old-timers get cranky when things go missing. She smiled then, but it wasn't warm. It was tight, managerial. Edna hobbled out of the den as we passed. Oh, is this our new helper? She asked softly. Yes, Marlene said. This is Laya. She's going to keep the place tidy. Edna's smile was kind. Welcome, dear. It's nice to have another friendly face around here. There was something sad behind her eyes, like she wanted to add something but thought better of it. My first week was quiet. The house was old but cozy. Creaky floors, faded floral curtains, the faint smell of lemon polish. The residents were mostly gentle souls. Mr. Harrison used a walker and told war stories with the same enthusiasm every night. Anita, sweet and forgetful, still talked to her late husband each morning. And Dale, a man in his 40s with mild developmental disabilities, proudly showed me his baseball card collection every chance he got. Marlene ran the place like a ship captain. Up at 5, yelling for breakfast, snapping at me to wipe faster, mop smarter. Efficiency, Laya, efficiency, she'd say, snapping her fingers. Edna mostly stayed upstairs. Some days she'd come down pale and sweating. Gripping the banister, she'd barely touch her food before retreating again. You okay, Miss Edna? I asked once as she trembled in her chair. She smiled weakly. Oh, I get these spells sometimes. Marlene takes good care of me. She gives me my shots and makes sure I rest. Shots? I asked. For my allergies, she said quickly. Nothing serious. But her eyes flickered away when she said it. One rainy evening while I was mopping the hallway, I heard a soft coughing on the stairs. Edna sat halfway down, clutching her chest. Miss Edna, are you okay? She tried to wave me off but looked dizzy. I just need my injection. Marlene's gone to town for groceries. I can't wait that long. I'm not a nurse, ma'am, I said, hesitating. It's easy, she whispered. Top drawer. Just in the arm, please. I helped her up to the room. It was dim, wallpaper peeling, one lamp buzzing weakly. 2 twin beds sat side by side. The one near the window clearly hers. The other cluttered with papers, pill bottles, and checkbooks. I found the syringe in a small medical pouch labeled Prednisol, steroid injection. Her name was written neatly on the vial, so I figured it was fine. I did it carefully, remembering how nurses had done it for my dad when he was sick. Within minutes, her breathing eased. You're an angel, she murmured. No problem, I said softly. But you should probably have a doctor look at you. Marlene handles that. She used to be a nurse's aide, you know. I nodded, though something about the metallic smell of antiseptic made my stomach twist. As I straightened her blanket, I asked, Why do you 2 share this room anyway? There's more space up here, right? She hesitated. I prefer not to be alone. I get night terrors sometimes. Before I could ask more, the front door slammed downstairs. Edna, Marlene's voice boomed. Where are you? She appeared seconds later, her glare sharp enough to cut. What the hell are you doing up here? Edna wasn't feeling well, so I told you, no staff upstairs. Hey, calm down, I said. She asked for help. I just gave her shot. Her eyes widened for a heartbeat before she forced a smile. You, what? I gave her the injection from the drawer. Her tone softened, but her shoulders stayed tense. "All right, thank you for that." She turned to Edna, smoothing the blanket. "Next time, just come get me, okay? Some of those meds aren't what they look like." The way she said it sent a chill crawling up my neck. The days that followed, I started noticing things. Little things that didn't feel right. Marlene always handled the mail. When residents asked about their social security checks, she'd wave a hand and say, "Don't worry, I deposit them for you." Once I saw her stuffing envelopes into her purse before heading out. I didn't think much of it until later that week, when I caught her in the kitchen around midnight. She was barefoot, holding a flashlight between her teeth. The floorboards creaked under her as she crouched by the sink cabinet, pulling out a plastic grocery bag wrapped in newspaper. She peeled the layers open carefully, and flashes of green caught the light. Cash. Bundles of it. Then a board groaned under my foot. Her head snapped up. The flashlight beam swept wildly before landing square on my face. "Jesus, Laya," she hissed. "You trying to give me a heart attack?" "I just came for water," I muttered. "Then get your water and go to bed." She stared at me for a long, quiet second, eyes sharp, assessing, before shoving the bag back under the cabinet. When she finally left, I waited, then crouched down and lifted the cabinet door. The same bag was there, full of bundled cash. Thousands, easily. That's when the pit in my stomach turned into something darker, dread. A few weeks later, Edna's health began to fail fast. She could barely move from her bed. Marlene told me she'd called a doctor, but I never saw one. Then one morning she came downstairs, her eyes red-rimmed and her voice flat. Edna passed in her sleep. The house went silent. Some residents cried quietly. Others just stared at their plates. "Did you call the coroner?" I asked. "It's taken care of," she said quickly. "She had a DNR, natural causes. Funeral home's picking her up tonight." But something in her tone made my skin prickle. That night, as the hearse pulled away, I stood on the porch in the rain. Marlene came out behind me, lighting a cigarette. "Sad, huh?" she said, blowing smoke into the wet air. "We were friends 30 years. Guess it's just me now." She smiled faintly, but her eyes didn't. After Edna's death, Marlene changed. She started redecorating the upstairs, renting out rooms to new tenants, and barking orders constantly. "Don't waste food. Everything costs money. Lights off by 10. And don't ask me about the mail." Then people started disappearing. The first was Dale, the one with the baseball cards. One afternoon, he told me his sister mailed him a $300 check. 2 days later, I overheard him asking Marlene if it arrived. "No check this month," she said smoothly. But I'd seen her earlier, tucking his mail into her cardigan pocket. That night, I woke to a faint scrape. Pause, scrape. I pulled the curtain aside. Out by the fence, Marlene knelt in the dirt, a flashlight clenched in her teeth, digging. When she turned her head, the beam hit her face, and for a second our eyes met. Her mouth stretched into a thin, horrible grin. Yellowed teeth, eyes wide, wild. I dropped instantly, heart hammering, and stayed crouched by the wall until dawn. The next morning, Dale was gone. "Where's Dale?" I asked casually at breakfast. "Moved in with his sister," she said. "Packed his things and left early." I glanced toward his room. The bed was stripped bare, the air sharp with bleach. That was when I started documenting everything. Notes in my phone, photos when she wasn't looking. I didn't know what exactly she was doing, but I knew it was evil. Then came the night she snapped. It was close to midnight. I was heading to my room when she appeared at the end of the hall, blocking the way. Her face was half-shadowed, eyes burning. "You've been watching me," she said softly. "What? Don't play dumb, sweetheart. You think I don't notice when someone touches my things? Marlene, you're scaring me." "Good," she smiled. "Maybe you should be scared." I turned to walk away, but she lunged, biting my cheek so hard I screamed. I felt skin tear, blood spilling warm down my neck. I shoved her off and bolted toward the door, yelling for help. The commotion woke the residents. Mr. Harrison came hobbling out, shouting, "Somebody call 911. Our neighbor heard the chaos and called before I could. When the cops arrived, Marlene was sitting on the stairs, covered in my blood, muttering to herself. They arrested her for assault. But when police searched the property, things unraveled fast. Behind the lilac bushes, they found patches of disturbed soil. Within hours, the yard was crawling with detectives, reporters, flashing lights. They unearthed 7 bodies, each buried with small personal items: a ring, a pair of glasses, a wallet. 2 were missing residents from the previous year. One was a woman whose family had been told she died of heart failure. And at the bottom of the last pit, wrapped in plastic, was Edna. She'd been poisoned, lethal doses of medication like the injections I'd given her. Marlene had forged documents, stolen social security checks, cashed life insurance payouts. Months later, I went to her trial. She looked smaller behind the glass, hair white, hands trembling. For a moment, I thought maybe she felt regret. But when I stepped closer, she looked up, smiled faintly, and said, "You should have minded your business. Laya, you were next." That voice, calm, almost tender, still crawls under my skin when I hear anyone whisper behind me. Sometimes I wake to the faint sound of digging, rhythmic, deliberate, and I swear I can smell that damp earth again. The boarding house was torn down 2 years later. They built a duplex on the lot, but every time I drive past, I glance toward where the garden used to be, because no matter how much time passes, I still hear her voice in the dark. "I should have poisoned you too." I never really wanted to live in the dorms. I remember standing in front of that 6-story red brick building at the edge of campus, suitcase in one hand, my mom behind me asking for the 5th time if I'd packed my toothbrush. "I did, Mom," I said, forcing a smile I didn't feel. The place looked older than the photos online. Paint peeling near the windows, a flickering red exit sign buzzing above the glass doors, and the moment I stepped inside, a heavy smell hit me. That college dorm cocktail of cleaning spray, dust and stale popcorn. My name's Elena Brooks, and this all happened during my freshman year at North Lake University, a medium-sized school in Indiana. I'd been assigned a random roommate named Tessa. Never met her, never talked to her. The housing office had sent me just a name and a room number, B213. When I arrived, half the room was already claimed. The bed on the left was neatly made, a suitcase tucked beneath it. A few things were scattered around, a string of fairy lights, a photo of some lake taped crookedly to the wall, and a candle she definitely wasn't supposed to have. I remember thinking, great, one of those girls who's going to FaceTime her boyfriend till 3 a.m. But when Tessa finally showed up, she wasn't what I expected. She was tall, thin, with pale skin and blonde hair twisted into a messy knot. There were dark half-moons under her eyes like she hadn't slept in days. She barely looked at me when she stepped in. "Hey, you must be Elena, right?" "Yeah," I said, trying to sound friendly. "Cool." She tossed her duffel onto the bed. "I'll take the left side." "You cool with that?" "Yeah, sure." That was it. The entire first conversation. No where are you from, no what's your major, nothing. Over the next few days, she was barely around. She'd be gone before I woke up and slipped back in long after midnight. I'd hear the soft click of the door, her quiet steps on the carpet, the creak of her mattress, and that was all. She never turned on the light, never said a word. At first, I didn't mind. I figured she was just busy or had her own circle already. College was weird like that. Some people adapted overnight. But after nearly 2 weeks without seeing her in daylight, I started to notice things. The smell. Every night, faint but distinct. A perfume that was floral and smoky, like gardenia laced with something burnt. And her phone, which never stopped buzzing. I saw it once when she left it on her desk. Unknown caller flashing again and again. One night stuck with me. It was a Thursday. Rain hammering against the window. Thunder rumbling somewhere far away. I was hunched over my desk finishing an essay when the doorknob rattled softly, like someone trying not to be heard. The door creaked open, and Tessa slipped inside, soaked to the bone, hoodie clinging to her shoulders. Her eyes widened when she saw me still awake. "Oh, hey," she said, freezing mid-step. "Hey," I replied, turning in my chair. "You okay? You're drenched." She hesitated, water dripping from her sleeves. "Yeah, just took a walk. At midnight?" I tried to laugh, but it came out uneasy. She shrugged. "I like the rain." Then she turned away, crawled into bed fully dressed, and pulled the covers over her wet clothes. I stared for a long time, waiting for her to shiver, to say something, but she didn't. By morning, she was gone again. A few days later, all her stuff vanished. I came back from class and froze in the doorway. Her bed was stripped, the fairy lights gone, the lake photo torn from the wall, even the candle gone. Only the dent in the carpet where her bed frame had sat remained. I texted her immediately. "Hey, did you move out or something?" No reply. 1 day passed, then 2, then a week. I asked the dorm office. They said her name was still on record, but sometimes students take temporary leave. That didn't make sense, but I didn't push it. Honestly, I wasn't complaining. With her gone, the room felt like mine. I rearranged everything, pushed my bed to the center, brought in a small bookshelf, hung a few posters. For the first time, it felt like home. Months went by. I stopped thinking about her. Until April. It was a Sunday night, and I had a midterm the next morning. I turned off my lamp around 11:30, exhausted, and drifted into sleep. Sometime around 2 a.m., something woke me. I woke up to the sound of keys jingling just outside my door. Then came the soft, deliberate click of the lock turning. My body went rigid. Someone was unlocking my door. The knob turned slowly, and the hinges gave a low groan as the door cracked open. A thin strip of hallway light spilled across the floor, and in that glow I saw a silhouette, slender, feminine, holding a couple of bags. I pushed myself upright, heart pounding in my throat. "Who's there?" I whispered. The door opened wider, and I saw her face. Tessa. She looked exactly the same, maybe paler, eyes sunken deeper, skin almost waxy in the light. She stepped in like she'd never left, dropped a duffel bag with a thud, and stared around the room. "What the hell did you do to the room?" I blinked. "What? Why's my stuff gone? Where's my bed?" "You," I stammered, sitting up fully. "You left, Tessa. You've been gone for 6 months." She just stared at me like I was speaking another language. "I was at my boyfriend's," she said flatly. "Okay, but you didn't tell me. You never texted back. I thought you moved out." She sighed, brushing rainwater from her hair. "Didn't get your text. My phone broke." She peeled off her soaked jacket, letting it fall in a wet heap, and started unpacking her bags right there on the floor, clothes tumbling out, a couple of books and a framed photo of her and some guy smiling in front of a lake. "Tessa, you can't just show up like this," I said, glancing at the clock. "It's the middle of the night." She looked up, her eyes cold. "It's my room too, remember?" Something about the way she said it, low, steady, like a warning, made my stomach knot. The next morning, I went straight to housing services and asked for a transfer. They said it might take a few days, so I had to live with her again for a week. That's when everything went wrong. She barely slept. Most nights she'd sit cross-legged on her bed, scrolling through her phone with the sound off, her face lit blue by the screen. Sometimes I'd wake up and find her just staring at the wall, unmoving. One night I woke to the sound of her whispering. At first I thought she was on the phone, just a low murmur like she didn't want to wake me. But then I realized there was no light, no phone in her hand. Only her voice. "Tessa," I whispered. She didn't respond. Her whispering grew faster, more urgent. I caught fragments. "He's not gone. I saw him. He was in the window." I reached over and flicked on the lamp. She was sitting upright, cross-legged, facing the wall, eyes wide open. "Tessa?" My throat felt dry. "Are you okay?" She turned her head slowly, her face completely blank. "Do you ever feel like someone's still in the room?" she asked softly. "Even when you know they're not?" I didn't answer. I just grabbed my hoodie and left. I spent the rest of the night in the downstairs lounge, pretending to study but really just staring at the dark windows until morning. A few days later, she was gone again. This time her stuff was still there. Her phone sat on the desk, screen still unlocked. Out of pure dread or maybe curiosity, I looked. There were dozens of messages from a contact saved only as E. The last few were unread. "You can't keep ignoring me. You said you saw me in your dreams again. He's gone. Tessa, let him go." The last message had been sent 2 days before she came back. That night, I was half asleep when I heard a faint scratching from under her bed. At first I thought it was the vent, but then it moved, slow, rhythmic, like fabric dragging across the floor. I forced myself to look. There was nothing under there. Just boxes, her suitcase, and that faint smell. Sour, metallic, almost like old blood. When housing finally approved my transfer, I didn't care where they sent me. I packed everything in one night and never looked back. 2 weeks later, my resident advisor stopped me in the hallway. She said campus police had gone through B213. Tessa's belongings were still there, untouched. She'd never come back for them. Then she added quietly, her ex-boyfriend, the one in that photo, he died in a car crash last semester, around the time she disappeared. No one had seen her on campus after the night she showed up at my door. Sometimes I still think about that moment, her unlocking the door at 2 a.m, dripping rainwater, whispering that eerie question. And I keep remembering the faint, muddy footprints on the carpet, leading from the door to her bed, but none leading back out. I remember that semester so vividly because it almost didn't happen for me. I was in my final year of med school, exhausted, broke, and barely holding myself together, but too damn stubborn to quit before the finish line. My name's Lena. That semester I'd been assigned to St. Corin General, a teaching hospital in a city I'd never even visited before. Most of my classmates got placements near home, but mine was 4 hours away. No family nearby, no hospital dorms available. So like every other broke med student on the edge of collapse, I started hunting for a cheap but livable place to stay. That's when Riley texted me. Riley, hey, where'd you get assigned? St. Corin kinda sucks. It's far, Riley. Wait, same. Want to split rent somewhere close? I remember that tiny spike of relief like it was yesterday. I'd known Riley since first year. Smart, sarcastic, always snacking in the library at 2 a.m. We'd survived sleepless exams together, shared panic attacks and laughter in equal measure. So yeah, I trusted her. We found a place through a Facebook listing, a 2-person boarding room on Ashland Street, a quiet, tree-lined neighborhood just 1 bus stop from the hospital. The landlady, Mrs. Porter, was in her late 60s, silver-haired and soft-spoken, but with that tight, no-nonsense smile that said, "Follow my rules or get out." She told us flatly, no men staying overnight and no loud noise past 10. The room itself was small but clean. White walls that smelled faintly of fresh paint, scuffed wooden floors, and a single bunk bed to save space. Riley claimed the lower bunk. I took the top. The first week went by in a blur. We woke up before sunrise, shared bus rides half asleep, and stumbled home after endless shifts smelling like bleach and coffee. Most nights we barely spoke, just traded quick jokes about how med school was slowly killing us before passing out. But then came that Thursday night. The one that changed everything. I was dead tired. The ER had been chaos all day, patients everywhere, no time to eat, my stomach twisting with caffeine and adrenaline. Riley texted that she was covering an extra shift because one of the interns called in sick. I decided to grab a late dinner from the McDonald's near the corner. I still remember that walk, the humid air clinging to my scrubs, the faint electric buzz of the streetlights, the smell of grease from the diner mixing with the sterile tang of antiseptic on my skin. My feet ached so bad it hurt to breathe. By the time I got back, it was close to 10:30 p.m. The boarding house was quiet, the kind of silence that felt padded and heavy. As I walked down the hallway, the floorboards gave a long, tired creak under each step. Inside our room, I locked the door, kicked off my shoes, and climbed to my bunk. My whole body felt like it was made of wet sand. I lay on my back, phone in hand, mind drifting somewhere between wake and sleep. Me. Coming home tonight? No reply. I shrugged and started scrolling through random Facebook videos, letting the blue light blur my thoughts. 5 minutes passed, then I heard it. Click, the door unlocking. My eyes opened. I was sure I'd locked it, but Riley had her own key, so I didn't think twice. The door eased open, slow and quiet. Then the faint sound of shoes being slipped off. A soft rustle, plastic bag crinkling. The bunk below me shifted with a small groan of wood. She must have climbed in. I smiled to myself, too tired to move. Me. Finally done? There was a pause. Then her voice came softly from below, muffled but clear. Riley. Yeah. Got us some breakfast stuff for tomorrow. Her tone was calm. Normal. I exhaled, a tiny smile tugging at my lips as my eyelids grew heavier. Me. Nice. And then the room went still again, the air thick and warm. the quiet only broken by the faint hum of the streetlight outside the window. "You're the best," I remember saying. We talked for a few minutes, nothing serious, just random hospital gossip. The new resident who couldn't read his own handwriting, the vending machine that kept swallowing our coins, the smell of burnt coffee that seemed to haunt the break room. It felt nice, ordinary. For a few moments it felt like the exhaustion, the anxiety, the endless rounds didn't exist. Then Riley said quietly, almost slurring my name, "Lena, can you turn the light off?" The switch was by the door, 5 meters away across the room. I groaned. "Girl, you're closer." "You do it." "Can't," she said, her voice small now. My head's pounding. Something about her tone was off. Thinner, weaker, like it hurt her to speak. I sighed, rubbing my eyes. "Fine, I got it," I muttered, half annoyed, half concerned. I sat up, the mattress creaking softly under my weight, and glanced down, ready to complain again. And then I froze. The bed below me was empty, perfectly made. The blanket folded neatly across the pillow. Her duffel bag gone. For a moment my brain just refused. I blinked, staring down like maybe my eyes hadn't adjusted right. But the lower bunk was definitely empty. "Riley?" I whispered. Nothing. I leaned over the edge, peering down again. Still nothing. My stomach twisted cold. I turned toward the bathroom door. It stood slightly open, dark inside. "Riley," I called again, barely above a whisper. No response. My heartbeat started to climb. I climbed down the ladder slowly, each step creaking in the quiet. The air felt thick, stale. My fingertips brushed the wall to steady myself. I crouched to look under the bed. Empty. Checked the closet. Nothing. The bathroom. Dark. Tiles cold under my bare feet. Then my phone buzzed. The sound was so sharp in the silence that I nearly dropped it. The name on the screen made my throat go dry. "Riley." I answered immediately. "Where the hell are you?" Her voice came through, muffled by background noise. Chatter, trays clattering, someone calling an order. "Still at the hospital. Sorry, didn't see your text. I'm heading to McDonald's right now. You want anything?" I just stood there shaking. You're not home." I whispered. "No?" she said, confused. "Why?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. The air in the room felt wrong, thick like it was pressing against my skin. I grabbed my phone and bolted. Didn't bother with shoes. I yanked the door open and ran, down the narrow hallway, down the cold tile stairs that echoed every panicked step. Mrs. Porter's door creaked open as I passed. "Everything all right, dear?" she called, but I didn't stop. I just ran. The night air hit me like a slap, humid, heavy, full of city noise. I sprinted across the street, past the faint neon hum of the 24-hour laundromat where a few people looked up, startled. My heart pounded in my ears, my breath ragged. When I finally reached the McDonald's, I saw Riley through the glass, standing in line, holding a paper bag, her hair still tied up from her shift. She turned, saw me, and frowned. "Lena? What the hell, why are you crying?" she asked, rushing toward me. I couldn't even speak. I just started sobbing right there in front of the soda machine. When I finally managed to get the words out, they came in gasps. I told her everything. How I heard the door, how I talked to her, how something had been in her bed. At first, she thought maybe I'd dreamed it, hallucinated from exhaustion. But then I showed her my call log, the timestamp. I had talked to her after whatever that thing was had spoken to me. We didn't go back that night. We checked into a cheap motel near the hospital. The room smelled of damp carpet and cleaning spray, and we shared one bed, both staring at the ceiling until dawn. Neither of us slept. The next morning, we told Mrs. Porter we were leaving. She didn't even look surprised. Her lips pressed into a thin line as she said softly, "That room's been empty for months before you girls came." The last one who stayed there. She was a nursing intern, too. Poor thing never woke up one morning. That was all she said. Riley and I packed our things that same afternoon and found another place near the hospital. It cost twice as much, but I didn't care. I couldn't look at a bunk bed again. Even now, years later, back home, safe in my own apartment, sometimes when I'm half asleep, I swear I hear it again. The faint groan of wooden slats shifting under someone's weight. And that low, tired voice whispering from the dark, "Turn off the lights."